Boyd,
Yes.
Dave,
Yeah.
Gavin,
And
and
Jimmy's running late. He texted me and said he's running late, so he's over
Brenda.
here. I'm here. Four here. Okay. Who's gonna talk first? Are you? Don't matter if you want to. Go ahead. Ryan.
Trying to stand somewhere everybody can see me. But I'm Ryan with Choice One Engineering, through the engineering consulting firm that was selected to aid the town in the master utility plan and that grant that OCRA's awarded the community in order to understand the utilities better and on how we move forward. So this process started probably about a little over a year ago. We've been working with community staff, the council at that time, and to help develop and understand what are the issues we're facing in your current water, wastewater, and stormwater systems, keep moving forward. So the state likes to look at this plan as how do we utilize this maybe over the next 20 years so we can project this out as the community grows, changes, what have you, so that this plan can be written along with you guys to help understand where you guys need to go, what your concerns, where things are at. So some of the things that even has us look into are what are population trends, the different economics, business growth, a lot of that stuff, and how that factors in, how we should look at the different components with your guys' utility system. So overall, population trends here have pretty much even keel. The business has been pretty even keel as well. So over the next 20 years, we're kind of projecting the same thing, but still even some moderate growth. So none of these utilities we ever want to look at and say, hey, if we just stayed the same forever, what does this look like for the community? We want to look at this as if we have some increasing population, some growth in some businesses, what does that look like? So if that should ever occur, you're not hamstrung at that point and now looking at this all over again and trying to start back over from scratch. So I'll try to go through these each by each. So I'll start with drinking water first, I'll go on wastewater, and then I'll go into stormwater, and then I'll open up for questions, but feel free to stop me if you have questions as I go. By all means, I don't like to just stand up and preach and talk. I'd rather just have a conversation with you guys, so that's kind of like I have to run this. So first with drinking water, three different components. You have the water tower, you have the collections or the distribution system, so the mains in the ground, and then you have your water treatment plant. Water treatment plant was redone back in 08-09. Typical working capacity, what we see with that is about 200,000 gallons a day. We have seen peaks with your distribution system up to 300,000. That's about 1 or 2 days a month. So overall, capacity of the plant is hitting very well. So usually on your normal days when school's in session, you're talking 83,000 gallons a day. So a lot of capacity left in that plant in order to service the community today, tomorrow, and even 20 years from now. So you guys have about twice the capacity that's there. And then how that functions. So that plant being fairly new, when we studied and looked at the plant, there's not a lot that really needs to be done with it. Overall, just let's keep up normal everyday maintenance, whether that's exercising, filter media replacement, all that fun stuff, which is a good sign. The two wells that you guys have that service that plant, one was installed back in the 50s, the other was in the 80s. So yeah, there's age to both of those. However, those are inspected yearly. Those reports have come back and everything looks great. Those wells are still functioning. The last, I think, report didn't have anything. The previous report had some minor things that were already taken care of. So the good thing is those wells are up, operational, no major flaws with those wells. And the aquifer that you guys use also has enough water to supply the community for future growth as well. So those are great things. There's other communities that face aquifer issues or even their wells aren't sufficient, so you guys are in a good spot there already.
How much do these wells allow for growth?
Sorry.
How much do these wells allow for growth?
So, I have to go back and look at the reports, but I believe both of the wells together combined, I think it was over 300 some gallons per minute they could pump. So that's way beyond what your plant can even have capacity to treat. So there's a lot of capacity remaining. Right now, if you had to look at a bottleneck in your system where you would have potential future growth issues, it would be probably your plant and your tower storage would be the two items for growth. Good question.
I think that is right, because one pump will pump 150 gallons a minute, so if both of them are running.
I think one's 150 and I think the other one's like 160, maybe 170 if I recall. It's right around 300. So enough to supply you guys beyond what even your plant can handle.
I think Doug was on the board at the time, I didn't really get work on that. I think we did get back and place one of the places.
Yes, the wells have been replaced, the actual pumps and all that stuff, several occasions. I believe a couple, might be about 10-ish years old. So there's still a lot of life left in those yet. There's nothing that we've seen through those reports and through those inspections that would lead us cause for concern. That's an immediate need or issue. Long-term planning, sure, that's always something to keep in mind. As you go forward, there's going to be stuff that happens, or just typical maintenance on those wells, or maybe the pump needs to be replaced. Similar if you live in the country and you have a well or even own a vehicle, there's simple maintenance and things that you look at as well. Any other questions on the wastewater or water plant? I will move into the distribution system. So with the distribution system, there was mains that were replaced back when when you guys did a project back in, I think it was 2003. And since then, you guys have 51,000 feet of main, a little over that, and about 8,000 of that's been replaced. So about 15% of your guys' system's new and in good working order. A lot of the new PVC material that we install or request to be installed has usually a lifespan about 75 years now. So you get a lot of good life left out of it. So that's stuff you won't have to worry about for a long time. Some of the other sections of your system, though, are starting to see those wear signs. You have old ductile iron or gas pipe that is in the ground. A lot of that metal, that soil gets to it, it corrodes over time. Water and metal don't always mix the best as well. So those start to deteriorate, build up on the interior sides of the main. So your normal 6-inch main now might be a 4-inch main. So that's where some of your distribution issues come from. Low working pressures, why hydrants don't function quite as well. Different situations like that. Other issues that you see is brakes. Your system has been seeing on average at least 2 breaks a year, and those are actually increasing, not decreasing, from what we're seeing from what the town staff provided.
Because they're old?
Yes, yes. There are specific mains that we know, specifically the one on Spencer Street. That one's been probably repaired 15 times. So there's probably about 15 different clamps on one main. That's probably about almost 700 feet of main.
I'm talking between high and.
Yeah, right by the town building there. Yep. So what we looked at was, what's your distribution system, your meters. That's one area that you could lose revenue. You guys are in the process of replacing all those, so that's a great start there. The other part is water loss from those breaks. That's revenues you guys can't capture. So your current loss reports are about 26%, but I believe the current one, when we sat actually in that office and met with staff and discussed this preliminarily, specifically the sanitary, is your guys' numbers were increasing. So we need to kind of watch that. You guys are on the threshold of where we need to really start watching that. We'd like to get it down below about 15%. You can't plan always for fires and everything else, or even if you do have some breaks, that stuff does happen. But we want to try to keep that down. The more water that goes out without getting revenue collected, the more you put you guys in the hole. So definitely red flags that caught our eyes with the water distribution system. Specifically areas with Spencer Street, Line, Bell, and Main. Those are 4 different areas where we've seen the most breaks. So we looked at what does it cost to replace those mains, even if we just replace them. Currently they're 4-inch mains. We like to see a minimum of 6-inch. Fire hydrants operate off of 6-inch. So at a minimum, just to keep fire flow purposes current, we'd like to see a minimum 6-inch. 8-inch is kind of the norm that most communities go with anymore. It's starting to become just as cheap as a 6-inch, but for this time purpose for the study, we're showing a 6 because if it's the minimum, can we still meet working pressures throughout the community? And that we found we could. So with all 4 of those projects, total replacement value is a little over $2 million. And the other item that we looked at with those is how do we break those down? Well, I can give you the priority of what we've heard from staff previously with Spencer Street being the number 1 priority, probably Vine, Bell, then Main. That could change tomorrow. That main can bust tomorrow. Not saying I hope that will, but those priorities could shift based off the frequency we see those bust or different issues that may arise with those mains. So to say that, hey, this is the one we're gonna focus on now, could be the one we focus on now, being Spencer Street. However, we could shift that tomorrow and say, hey, it's Main Street, because Main Street has 2 catastrophic breaks that will drain the entire tower. We need to shift and move as things move too. So it's fluid. We're saying that's number 1, but really they're all 1A, 1B, 1C, 1D. The second item that we looked at is this town system has a lot of dead-end mains. At the ends of the fingers of the system, a lot of them are just dead-end. They're not looped back into the system to allow good water flow, so when water's pulled one direction, they can pull water through the main one and then pull it back the other, so that water flows evenly and doesn't just sit and get stagnant. Stagnant water creates disease, buildup, and everything else in that main, so we do not want that. You want to find a mechanism to keep water circulating in your system as much and often as possible. Those looping, we would definitely say that's a second priority. Let's fix the mains first, make sure they function, they operate adequately, service the community. We don't have downtime, boil water advisories. When looping can be something that, hey, we'll worry about this after the fact. The looping projects, cost-wise, we're looking at probably a little bit over $800,000 in cost. Any questions on the water distribution system?
I was
Yes.
curious, I read the report.
Yeah.
God bless you for writing it, because that's some boring stuff. But I was wondering, the fire hydrants, I just recently mapped them with the GIS, and I located 77, and we compared that to the 911. There's apparently an alert 911 for firefighters, they can find out where the fire hydrants are, and they had 76. So I was wondering, I heard today that there could be 83. How do I know where to find the other ones? Do you know that?
So the base map that we received actually had 65 on it, so.
That was my other question, so.
Yes, so a lot of that stuff we found was probably a little bit old, a little bit outdated, because even some of those hydrants that we looked at back that they said were non-functioning, we believe are functioning because they were included in the projects that were done in '03. So I think there was just some things that just weren't updated as time went on. I would say probably in your, if you counted 77 or 76, that sounds probably about right. There's definitely areas that looked like they were missing some.
Right.
Whether they were taken out and replaced. We looked at an old report that was basically showing different parts of the community where basically the hydrants were non-functioning. They were under capacity, didn't work, and that's what we were going off of.
So, but you don't know that they've been tested within the last year?
To our knowledge, we don't know that they've been tested in the last couple of years.
Okay,
And that goes with the valves as well.
okay. And you knew of 49 valves?
That's what we were told based off that same one that told us 65.
So there's probably.
The tough part about valves is when they come through and pave, if they pave over them, we'll
Right.
never find them again.
Right.
And that's the tough part about valves. I know every community out there battles with that is, hey, how do we shut down this main? We can't, we don't know how. And eventually leads to whether you put additional valving in order to supply the system,
Or data for.
or you're digging up the road. And neither one's great, because both of them are expensive options, so.
Okay. But I'm gonna be mapping more stuff, so I'm just curious where you found.
I'm
data
happy to
for-
provide you all that data that we
That'd be
have.
awesome.
Yes, absolutely. I'll give you a card afterwards that we can connect.
Outstanding.
Talking about curb stop, sure.
These would be actually main valves, not curb stops, yes. Any other questions before I move on? Okay. Water tower, another great sign. That tower is in great shape. That tower was built in '03. Typical towers we've seen have 100 years lifespan. There's a lot of life left in that tower. The IDEM requirements are they require a day and a half storage. That's kind of their rough round number. You guys have that and beyond. You got about 1.5 to 1.75, depending on how much usage you have that day. That's plenty of storage. That's what we'd be designing for your tower if we were replacing it today. You guys are in great shape with that. So that's a great sign for growth. Really with that tower, the last inspection report came back absolutely clean. Nothing to resolve, nothing, no issues. Biggest thing to look for in the future is paint. It doesn't need painted yet. When it does take paint, it's probably going to be about $250,000 for paint. So So that's one thing to keep in mind. There are cheaper options to paint them, whether you paint inside, outside at the same time, or you do one or the other. But if you're doing that whole tower inside out, you're probably talking $250,000. And that'd be probably for your higher end paint, probably last about 35 years. There's cheaper solutions that'll probably last you probably 15 to 20, but let's plan for the long term, and if we have to look at, reevaluate at that time, we'll reevaluate at that time. Heck, we can hope for maybe technology to get better, and that paint will last us 35 years, and it becomes the cheaper option potentially too. So
And we are at where right now on that?
you're probably in about year 20 now with that paint. So your paint, typically when they paint towers, they put higher end paint on it initially, so you've probably got a good 15 years, maybe 10, 15 years on that paint. Granted, when you get those tower inspection reports every year, they're gonna let you know, hey, we're starting to see some of the rust come through, the paint's starting to chip, and it's time to start thinking about paint. They're gonna let you know through those inspection reports. Any questions on your tower? Yes?
Did you say paint the inside? Is that part of the process as well?
You paint inside and out. It's two different style paints, yes. So the inside of the tank is a certain specific paint. Obviously, it's got the water contact. The exterior has more of the UV prevention, all that, since it sees the exterior of the sun. So they're two different style paints. Yes.
Thank you.
Yep, no problem. Any other questions? I'm not needing all the talking. I'll move on to wastewater, and this is your guys' highest priority. I would say your water is number 2, but your wastewater is definitely number 1. You are currently under a read order with IDEM, the Indiana Department of Environmental Management, and that is not a good list to be on. Essentially, that means that your system's not compliant with their standards, and if you don't meet their requirements over the set period of time, you will be fined. And they're not bashful about finding folks if they're not trying to move forward to resolve those issues.
And or push on a water ban.
That too, and if you guys get put on a water ban, that essentially limits the community from growth. They will not allow additional connections, which is a very hard thing to get off of as well, because you have to prove that you made enough room or capacity in order to accept additional connections. Other communities really struggle with getting off of that. The compliance that you guys have fallen out of is your combined sewer overflow structure. So when your guys' system sees wet weather events, that sanitary fills up, and then you guys have specific structures placed throughout your system that actually let the stormwater and the sanitary water out into the stormwater system, and then it goes down the creek and it's gone, it's out of here, it doesn't get treated. That's why they're looking at this system. So they're looking at any system throughout the state that has these items. It's not just Redkey. So it's not that they're picking on this community. They're trying to make a hard effort. And this is not just the state of Indiana. This is a federal mandate where they're really trying to push Clean Waters Act. A lot of people have heard about it. So,
What,
sure.
what about the CSOs that are out there on Main Street? It seems to have closed the county comes in.
They want any CSO that's releasing wastewater to be essentially
It's a county clerk.
So you're talking CSO 6, right? So we've talked about that briefly. So the tough part about that one is you're probably being looked at it because it's being tested in the village or in the town, but the issue may be resolved outside of your district, your jurisdiction. So you don't have potentially maybe the say to do anything about it. You could say, hey, do this, but you have no authority up there. So there's nothing to potentially do to resolve it.
So how do you fix that out there?
Our resolution with it would be, one, you have to go to the health department. That health department's like, this is where the issue's known. Have that conversation, whether it be in their meetings, so it's one, documented publicly so that they know that you're trying to make an effort. You can prove to the state then that you're trying to make an effort as well. 2, it'd be going to the regional sewer district meetings at the J County Regional Sewer District. They also have the authority. They are the ones supposed to be looking at how the exteriors or the fringes that are residing within the county are serviced.
And
How does it function?
the people that's requesting, can they not, Los Angeles citizens, if there is so much distance?
That's how the health department and the RSD would work together. The RSD could potentially service them something that would potentially come into Redkey, but it wouldn't be Redkey's dime or Redkey's responsibility, minus just applying, hey, we have a main that's right here that you guys can tie into. Dunkirk's got several examples like that where the regional sewer district ties into their system. It's monitored, it's metered, so you guys basically essentially build them based off that meter at a specific rate that's on there's an agreement that's established essentially for a certain
Where the septic system.
if they can, correct. Correct. Yes. That answers your question on CSO6. I'm happy to go into more detail on that if you guys would like. I know that was one of Ted's questions as well.
They cleared all of them but the two, right? IDEM cleared all of the CSOs but 6 and 7, right?
That's true right there.
The one at
No,
the
one
plant.
is at the plant.
The one at
the
Seven is at the plant.
Yeah, yep. So, which is a great start. Great start. So you
You
guys
had
are coming,
10.
yeah, you guys are coming a long way around.
There's something they're supposed to remove that, see, I know they have, they don't like that. They're supposed to fix it.
I did not see that in the plans. Now, was that talked about at the time potentially? I don't know that. I wasn't in those meetings, so I can't really say, for
Who
sure.
says so? Is that what it is?
Yeah. With the plant, so that was replaced back in 1819, as most of you probably know. That plant is operational at 300,000 gallons a day. The big red flag that IDEM is seeing is during your dry weather conditions, you're servicing about 127,000 gallons on average as your last 3 years average. During wet weather events, when it rains, you're upwards of talking about, 820,000 was the max, but the high average, your average of all of those was 600,000. So we are not just overwhelming that plant, we're blowing through it. And that's what's causing their red flag. What's causing that? All the stormwater runoff, whether it be downspouts, sump drains, catch basins, yard inlets, your clean out caps not on and being using it as basically a receiver. There's a lot of different things that come at play of how we're seeing this water enter the system. And that's what's causing your plant, which is a new plant, to have to work harder than it should. And the reason why I also care about that is anytime you work mechanical items harder than you have to, longer than you have to, what do? They wear out. And so you have to pay for them sooner, replace them sooner, replace them more often. So that's costing the town a lot of money that's not seen or maybe even captured in normal operating conditions. So that's one thing that we really want to get down. 2.3 times your normal flow is a bad sign.
What's the rate?
Your plant's capacity was designed for 300,000. And the averages that we're seeing of the highs, you're talking about 600,000, but we've seen peaks up over 800, which is why your CSOs are operating.
I know when they did this sewer sectors, they did change a lot of that, it's all about people.
Yeah,
They
yes.
didn't quite come in.
They did that. They replaced a lot of there's some combined system that we still see that you guys have. They replaced some of those catch basins, put new storm drains in, got that stuff out. Great start. The tough part about inflow and infiltration with clear water is it's a bear. You can get a perfectly new system and you're still gonna have it. There's no way to keep that stuff watertight enough to keep water out there permanently. The biggest thing that we like to see, and like what we stated in our report, if we can get to about, instead of 2.3 times a peak, we can get 1.5, 1.6, 1.7, so we stay within the tolerances of your plant, perfect, that's where we want to be. That's our end goal. It's going to take time and money to get there, unfortunately, and it's going to be a slow process, and that's why we have to use things like this and show IDEM, hey, we're making steps and strides to appease that agreed order, that we're not, hey, we're just sitting back and letting it fly.
You could find that out, right?
Yes. And I is something you probably will be fighting forever. It's not something that you have to fight maybe as hard as you guys are now, or have been in the future. And that's try to hopefully we can get more specific financing or whatever we can get to help the community out to resolve that.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes, sir.
How much we owe that $4.5 million sewers that we done about 8 years ago?
Well, I can look it up. It's buried in this thick book. quite a bit from what I recall.
Bill on the tower too, Jimmy.
Huh?
Bill on the plant and the tower.
I want to say, shoot,
Payments is twice 40,000 and 22 on the interest.
yeah,
Twice a year, so that's 80,000 paying on the loan and 44,000 on the interest.
correct. Those numbers sound correct. I want to say that you guys are still, your balance is still probably over 3 million now or something like that. That was a lot yet from what I
Who do
recall.
we owe?
I think that one was USDA, if I recall. It's the United States Department of Agriculture.
USDA, seems like. What?
So your tower, on your tower, you guys still owe about 1.1 million.
Was it through USDA too?
That one, I believe so. Then for your wastewater, yeah, the town still owes about almost, just under 3.3 million. On
Both
that,
of them together or what?
No.
that 3.3 million is what you still owe on the obligation for the treatment plant and the collection system improvements that you did back in 2018,
So that's about 4.4 million that we still owe between the two.
Correct. Did that answer all your questions on that?
Yeah, on that one. Now, when we separate our stormwater, 17, where's that stormwater go? Does it go on that side of the storm sewer system, or does it feed right back into the sewer?
Yeah, all the stuff that you guys separated back in 17, 18, 19,
Yeah, we
that stuff would
separated.
go straight to the creek.
So the stormwater goes straight to the creek.
That's correct.
Is it on this side of the creek, on this side of the storm sewer, or this?
I don't know if it matters what side of it we're talking about. Any storm sewer that's been separated is going either in a county tile or it's going in the creek. I mean, it's not, anything that's still considered combined is still getting in your sanitary.
Didn't you say the issue was it's not being treated and going into the creek?
Stormwater does not require treatment.
Okay. That's what I thought, but I must have misunderstood.
So
what you said.
rainwater that falls, hits your house, gets in your downspouts, that water can leave as fast as it can. We don't need that here in town, let's get it out, let's not flood, let's get it out of here.
You're treating clear water.
Correct, correct. Anything that goes into your sink, toilet, shower, anything like that, washing machines, any type of gray water, that's going in your sanitary. That has to be treated. That's what we're talking about.
From what you see there, was there a leak between this and the last time we had? Was there a leak or anything?
Has your flow rates gone down?
I mean, like your sewage or something. How much separation do we ask for here? You know that?
So when you guys did that plan, looking back at those plans, it looked like you cut out a lot of the separation, probably due to budgetary concerns would be my guess. Typically plants, you know, there's a lot of different components, pieces, there's things you switch out, cost escalates, so you kind of say, hey, this is what we have to do, we have to treat it, so the system kind of gets avoided a little bit. So there was some stuff that was pulled out, and some of that stuff that was pulled out, we definitely recommend getting put back in.
We're still treating a lot of good water, sure.
You got it, you got it. And the other part that it factors into your plant is when you send clear water in there and blow through it as fast as you do, a lot of the aerobics and a lot of the treatment capacity of your wastewater system gets disrupted. So the next time that water level goes back down, you can go back to your system, it actually disrupts it, it doesn't treat as well. It's used to treating the dirty gray water, it doesn't want clean water in there. So, there's a lot of different factors at play with it, absolutely. Any other questions about the wastewater plant? I'll move on to the kind of your guys' collection system. The collection system that you guys have, most of it was probably built, I believe, looking back at records in the 60s. A lot of that being 8-inch clay tile, that truss pipe. Most of you guys have seen what clay tile looks like. Insert one into the other. Great great pipe for the technology back in that day, but it, over time, is not great when it comes to what issue you guys are experiencing. Clay tile is notorious for joint failures, so offset pipes, water can get in. Tree roots. Tree roots love clay tiles because they can get in there and get a fresh drink of water. The other component that we see is your taps. So my house is sanitary line goes out to the main. There's a lot of issues that we see with those too. A lot of them are just pieced together, not always sealed off like we do today. That's another mechanism where it finds a way to collect that water. So based off what we see, age of the system, 50 years old, how we sit today, 60 years old, that tile is only rated for 50, 60 years. So when it gets to that point where you hit that useful life of that material, it's time to start looking at, hey, what are the means and methods to start replacing them and that upgrading it. I like to look at it as a car. My car's got 200,000 miles on it. It's probably time for me to start looking at what's next. You know, I'm replacing rotors, replacing my brakes, my tires are starting to wear out, all my check engine lights are starting to come on. That's the same thing we're seeing in your system right now. So it's time to start looking at what do we need to do to replace. And that doesn't always just fall on the town and what the town's responsibility is. There's private laterals too. Now, our recommendation is always try to fix what's in the streets first. That one helps out the residential customer because you, as the town or community, you can pull in grant financing services for the mains and some of the bigger issues, like storm drains tied into your sanitary. A residential homeowner can't do that. They're prevented from accessing a lot of these public financing dollars or low interest loans. So it's a great to start there and kind of work your way out is what we kind of see. So different things can also be found while you guys are out there doing different construction projects and understanding your other issues, whether it be old sanitary taps or what have you. I know a lot of communities try to do different things. For one community, try to implement potentially a sanitary lateral replacement program where they say, hey, we'll buy the materials, you guys pay for the labor, those suckers replaced because we need them done. That's some sort of incentive program. It's the only other incentive the program you have is raise rates, and nobody likes that. So knowing at the age and condition of the pipe, it's time to look at, hey, where do we need to go, and where are the biggest issues? So what we did is we performed a flow monitoring study. So essentially, we put equipment in your sewers in different specific strategic locations throughout your system, and we gauge and monitor the levels. And we monitor the levels through dry weather conditions and wet weather conditions so that we can see what's happening and where's the spikes occurring. So we can isolate certain sections of your community. So the goods, I think we tested 9 different sections of the community. 4 of them we found to be in poor condition, which means you were receiving a lot of stormwater in those mains. Those peak flows went from just normal baseline flows during dry conditions to being 7 to 23 times higher. That's a lot of clear water entering your system. So those are the ones we're picking out and say, these are the ones we need to attack. These are the ones we're going to, hey, there's definitely clay tile here, there's definitely direct connections. How do we know that? Direct connections, we see in our graphs that peaks really fast. It almost looks like minutes later you see that it is that initial rush. That tells us that you have direct connections into your sanitary sewer main. Those are great low-hanging fruit to start attacking and start pulling out. The other thing we see though is once we hit that peak, it takes days for it to draw back down to where she was.
Those are the ones that you gave us in the last meeting.
Correct,
right?
correct, correct. I have different reports out here too that you guys are more than happy to look at. I can walk through them and how we evaluate them and kind of have some text in there to kind of help walk you through what we see because we try not to make it too complicated or boring as what we talked about before. The report's going to be. Yeah. Bless you on that. So with that, we're definitely looking at what do we do to take those peaks down. And so how do we get that infiltration out? Different mechanisms can be lining the main. So that's putting a new, basically, if we find out that clay tile, hey, structurally it's sound, but the joints are terrible or they're separated, but yet we can still put a liner in there. That's a very cheap alternative to replacement. You're not tearing everything up, you're getting a good product in there that lasts another 40, 50 years, and when it's installed in the right conditions. The other thing you look at is replacement. Replacement is a very expensive option, but then now you know you have a product that's going to last 75 years. So that's when we talk about present worth analysis. What's the best situation for your guys' scenario? Hey, this main is in this condition. We can look at lining it versus reconstruction. So lining, you may be looking at $35, $40 a foot, or you're looking at replacement, you can be talking $100, $110 a foot, depending on depth. There's a big cost savings there on how we can really attack this problem. Collection system, that's where all your combined sewer structures are currently located. Well, the great part is most of them are gone. They'll have the one at the headworks, and then you have the other one that's, like we talked about, it's county related. So you guys have a great start on where we need to go move forward, but that last one's gonna be probably the toughest one to get out. Because it's right by your plant, it's where everything goes, it's where everything is funneled to. When we did our testing, when we popped a couple manholes right after rain, we're looking down in the manhole and like, well, we have to come back full water, can't see. So we had to wait. When you have manholes of 5, 6 feet of water in them for long extended periods of time, that tells us that your plant is trying to keep up with what your system's trying to throw. That was down here. You got it. Yep. I think that was another area that we heard from residents when we were actually out there that said they had a tough time flushing.
They covered Union Street, and I believe it was Sidney. They tried to line them with no success.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong.
That's a tough thing with different pipes like that. We highly recommend relying on the actual supplier, but no one always taking their word for granted, because they're gonna say the product works, but let's be practical about it. Is this product gonna work and last?
We had a problem earlier, too, trying to make it up.
Railroads are always entertaining, but they can be
So lining the pipes, or replacing the pipes, I mean, that I can see taking care of the infiltration, but the inflow, the bounce pipes, maybe even abandoned buildings that fill with water and not going to the sewer. I mean, that's a different story. You have to find what smoke lines and stuff, see where all that's coming through, and then can you find it?
If I'm not mistaken, they did that, the town did it, and they got rid of a lot of that problem. When Randy was here, but he said a lot of them were smoked and tested, and they got rid of a lot of them. So unless there's secretly some still out there, most of those were taken care of.
It's hard to find all of them is the problem, because over time, as it's the darnest thing, you could have a storm sewer up here and your sanitary system down here. So over time, my storm system is broken down, and it's going to my sanitary. You have a nice underground river that flows right in one pipe to the next, because that water is going to find relief. It wants to get out of there, it's going to get out of there, and water is a powerful thing. That's what most of us have seen in our past lives. Whether it be floods that we've seen throughout, or what have you, but water is a tough animal to fight when it comes to the I&I. So even though, yes, maybe you found a lot of them, new ones can always arise. So yes, we didn't know that storm sewer that was separated, that pile that was initially in the main, it surcharged, blew the tile out, now it's fighting in, creating an underground vacuum, goes to the sanitary, now we have a new problem. So different mechanisms or different issues can arise still over time, is how that kind of works. Cammering is a big thing. You can see a lot of issues right away with whether it be your infiltration, understanding where taps are. Why does this property have 3 taps instead of just 1? Those are great indicators. Other things that we can look at is dye testing. Dye testing is a great mechanism where we say, hey, here's a catch basin, throw some dye tablets in, run some water, and then, hey, it's in our sanitary sewer. We know it's getting there somehow. A lot of different mechanisms that can still be understood and had in order to how to fight these.
Well, we've got a camera system, as a matter of fact, it's pretty nice one. I think if they paid like $15,000 to $20,000 for it. Apparently it was broken about 6 years ago, but I called up the company called yeah, and then we got it working and stuff. So that's something that we can.
That's a great tool.
Can we maybe get Alliance or somebody to kind of show us some of the tricks of the trade to like scope the lines, or is that?
How to line the lines, you're saying?
No, Alliance, the Alliance of America.
Lines for water, yeah.
Have them kind of train us, or some of the folks here, on how to use the camera to look for.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I'm happy to show you what to look for, just the different things in the pipe.
Okay.
You can see when a pipe's surcharging based off different water levels, where your sedimentation is on the side of your pipes. Yeah, calcium buildup, just all that. I mean, there's a lot of different things you can look at, and that tells you a story of what's going on. Happy to do that with you as well. When it comes to your camera stuff too, we'll show you the different areas to focus on first. There's no point in you testing something that we already looked at and said, hey, we know you're not getting additional flow there. Yeah, there may be some small improvements that can be made, but hey, here your large ones are on these areas, so we can definitely work with you on that as well. So the big issues that we've seen, I should have brought a big map of this, it'd be easier to look at. But the big ones that we saw were the George Street and Bella Avenue, Sherman Street, Oak Street, and Ward Street. Those are the big ones that we've seen where there's a lot of issues. Some of the flow testing results look like there's issues, but there's not, because it may be downstream. So there's an issue we found up here. Well, that issue looks the same down here. Well, that doesn't mean the issue's there. That issue's just getting following through. Yes.
I'm sorry, I just wanted to ask a couple things backtracking. How old did you say the wastewater plant was?
It was built in 18. 5 years, 6 years ago.
2018.
Yeah, 2018, yes.
Not 1890.
And then you said that it's built to flow through 300,000 gallons.
Correct.
And your average right now you're looking at is twice that, 600,000
During wet,
during wet.
during rainfall events, during a certain type of rainfall event.
But it could be upwards of 820.
So let's say we had a 2-inch rain that came through the community, yes, we're probably seeing 800,000, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And then another thing, you just mentioned the streets that you're looking at, George Street, Bell Avenue.
Sherman Street, and then Oak and Boyd Street, that intersection. Those are the areas that we tested, and there's areas that it funnels off on.
You said Oak and, what was the last one?
Oak and Boyd, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, no problem. So the fun part everybody loves to hear is cost. What does this cost? We looked at worst case scenario for everything being replaced. Right now, we like to get a third party that verifies what we believe with some of the mains, if it can be lined or not. That's something we typically resolve when we get to the point of actual construction. So we go for dollars, we go for the max dollars, we say, oh wait, we can save on this, this, and this. How do we stretch those then? So when we talk about total improvement costs for those areas that we talked about, we're talking about 8.4 million. And that's a hard number to look at. So that's why we're talking about this is a 20-year plan. You can't do all that tomorrow. Unless the state's very generous and gives you all 8.4, which is very, very difficult anymore. And a lot of the additional funding and financing has been used up. A lot of the COVID money is now gone. So a lot of the grant funds are a lot more financing versus grant-based. However, you guys do qualify for some additional grant service. You guys have debts on the books, and you guys also have enough LMI population to be able to receive additional grant rates. So, with that, the biggest one that we seen was the George Street and Bell Avenue intersection. That one we saw the highest peaks with the highest flow valuations that we can really start knocking some stuff down. Questions on the sanitary pipes?
So we're under an IDEM agreement order. If we can knock these 7 to 23-fold increases of inflow from those areas, how close were we going to be to complying with the agreed order for IDEM?
That's a tough. If we look at the increase in the peaks of the values, you guys, those 4 project areas, let's say they are all done, all replaced. If we took those peaks out and the amount of water that comes through, when you're 7 to 23 times higher than our normal flows, you're making a huge dent in what you're currently experiencing. Can I say it's going to resolve everything? No. Because the moment I say that, it won't. There's no guarantees, but I can see this based off the data that you guys have 4 great project areas that you guys can look at and proceed with, and have a good, comfortable feeling knowing that you're going to make a dent in what you're currently experiencing.
So George and Bell being one, Sherman and Oak and Boyce.
Yeah, the other one, I know Randy said that you guys don't have a Central Park Avenue, but that was how we labeled it.
Central.
Is it Central Avenue?
Central
Central.
Avenue, right here.
Okay, that was the other one that we saw. Excuse me. Any other questions with that? So the last item is your storm sewer system, the one that everybody forgets about until it rains. So the great solution is just it never rain again, and we won't have to worry about it, but we all know that won't happen.
So the 8.4 million doesn't cover what you're getting ready to top, it's more money on what you're,
Yeah.
okay?
That's why these plans are just a 5-year plan. It's not even feasible to even think of that. Storm system, you guys have a fairly robust storm system now currently that spreads throughout a good part of the community. A lot of communities this size don't have that, so you guys have a good leg up there already. The issues that we're probably seeing is one, it's getting aged, and two, it's probably a little bit under capacity for the area it's servicing. Very standard for what we're seeing. We're getting higher intensity rainfall events. So what does that mean? It's raining harder for shorter durations. So instead of it just raining all day, and we're getting an inch of rain and the tile's managing and keeping up, we're seeing an inch of rain in 1 hour. That makes the capacity loading on that tile a lot harder. And that increase has been happening probably for the last 20 years, and we're starting to see it increase even more. Everybody likes to talk about the 100-year rain, right? Basically, that's a frequency. What's the percentage chance that that happens? It's a 1% chance every year. Well, nobody likes calling it the 100-year rain anymore because some communities have seen that rainfall event the last 3 years. So we're seeing higher intensity rainfall events for shorter durations. So that's why a lot of people are seeing their creeks coming out of the banks, the additional flooding, or localized flooding in yards, what have you. So there's a lot of different things at play there. You guys do have what's called FEMA regulated floodplain. So basically that is area that the federal government has set aside that is very difficult to do much within. Requires flood insurance if you live there. It's basically areas where if we receive that 1% chance rain, that area does flood. So there's not a lot of mechanisms we can do that we're not even talking other than that, because some of that stuff costs, there's a lot of mitigation costs. There's claim to set asides. I mean, you're talking probably hundreds of millions of dollars just to save and fix those problems. That's why a lot of folks don't. Yes.
Are the floodplains, are they on some of those maps? Are they?
Yes.
Okay, I can't see from this.
I can go through them with you.
I mean, I thought maybe for the audience, for the council.
Yes, they are on there. You can also see them. Those maps are regularly updated on FEMA's website as well, that you can always see. If you're in one, you know, because your bank's going to require you to have insurance, and that's not cheap stuff to maintain either.
I suppose the possibility of putting a lagoon pumping the back of acres is impossible.
It takes a lot of cost to do that because, one, your permitting cost alone, you're talking tens of thousands of dollars just in permitting to get it through the federal government to actually look at it. Then we got to get it to FEMA. They'll review it, which takes tens of thousands of dollars for them just to review it. So before we do anything, we're talking probably $50,000 in just permit fees before we've done anything in the ground yet. And we don't even know if we'll say yes yet.
What about,
So there's a lot of risk.
around tank like a lot of stuff, right? They did that possibility before, the street officers, lagoon separation like we did, or could be a tank. I mean, a huge tank.
Yeah.
Bring it back anyway with a tree.
But you're talking wastewater now. You're talking how to eliminate the
D&D,
CSO,
oh, yeah.
not necessarily floodplain. Yeah, sorry. I think we're talking about a little bit two different things. Yes. I'm sure when you guys put your plan in, they made you look at every different
Three
street.
options.
Yeah. So typically what the state requires is when you go for financing, they want to know that the due diligence has been had on, hey, if this is your improvement project, what other options have you looked at to verify that this is your best option? So that's a requirement by them for any financing that you go forward with. Storm sewer system, there are areas of the community that aren't serviced by a lot of storm sewer system. And those are the specific areas where you are seeing some of the highest INI. Not a surprise. I mean, that's pretty typical. When you don't have it there, it's going to find a way to get out. It's finding a sanitary sewer system to get out. The biggest issue with stormwater systems is money, right? How do you fund or finance a stormwater system? there's two different mechanisms. One, you pay for it out of your own pocket with your general funds, so you're taking from those, or communities start implementing a stormwater utility plan. Basically, that makes another rate that you put on your storm sewer system. Most of them set them like $2 to $5 a month, and that money gets set aside to be used as matching grant funds, potentially for stormwater improvements. That money can also be used to help aid with your sewer separation and your I&I costs. So that dollars can be piggybacked with your sanitary sewer system as well in certain circumstances. But without a stormwater utility, you don't even qualify for grant financing through the state. And that's the biggest flaw with not having one. I know most communities hate them because it's just another rate the community has to pay, but without them, you don't even qualify. So the tax dollars that you as a town are planning to throw into the state's not ever going to give back to you, and they're going to keep it. So that's one thing to keep in mind and consider as time goes on, as you work through some of this, is eventually if we're going to do storm sewer improvements and we want to start maximizing some of the tax dollars, that may be something that has to be looked at.
What was that again? What do we have to look at?
So how your water and sewer are already a utility, you would implement a stormwater utility as well.
Alright.
Can you explain how that, I read how you determine that rate? Is it based on permeability of the property and all that
Correct.
stuff?
So typically what we do is you look at you try to look, okay, we'll take a quarter of the community. Do we get a good average for what a residential property is? And let's say that average impervious area for a residential property is 3,500 square feet. That's what we're going to use as your base case. Every residential user is going to pay the same rate. And then you take that 3,500 and you go to the businesses and the larger per pay services and you attribute it to that. So let's say I have a property that's 7,000 square feet. I'm now paying twice the rate because I have twice the impervious area.
As a business or as a?
As a business.
Okay, so if I put a giant shop in a bunch of concrete as a private resident, would mine stay at the 35, or is that?
Those are the fun gray areas of setting up a utility. A lot of communities are just going to look at a residential property as a residential property and leave it be. One, they don't want to inhibit or prohibit some of that, but let's say you turn that shop into a business. Now they may look at it differently.
Right.
So there's a lot of different gray areas that need to be looked at and had. There's also credit systems you can do too. So let's say they put some sort of stormwater management system, rain barrel collection, all that fun stuff. That can be used as a credit system as well. Say, okay, we'll give you a 25-30% credit if you put that in and manage that. If it's not managed well, hey, your rate goes back to your normal rate. If it's managed, we'll keep your credit going. It's an incentive for them to keep things current, keep things working properly.
I'm just way too smart.
Any questions on storm sewer? So what does this all mean? What does this report do? What does it do for the community? Besides help you guys understand some of your issues, your problems, this report now can be used and brought to the state to find money. We now use this basically as your bargaining chip saying, hey, here's our issues. Feel our pain, help us to move forward. That's what we want to do. We've done the due diligence, we've done our research. Now we're looking at, hey, state, help us out. Help us figure out how do we move forward with financing. We can't afford this by pulling it out of our own pockets. We need aid, we need assistance. And a lot of that's coupled with, okay, we're already paying this rate, our rates are at this level, so that may be qualified for this grant funding and financing. All great things that now we can go forward, start pairing things together, how we work this through together, so we're not just hurting the end users, meaning the customers. Biggest complaint we heard in the surveys was user rates. The state hears that, the state sees that, now that's what we need to do. That's what we like to work with communities on, is how can we give you the biggest bang for your buck? Because without that, you're just penalizing everybody and just hurting people in the progress in the future. So this document now will be used for basically the pursuit and search for financing dollars for a lot of these larger costs that we've seen. Now, does this drag you guys in and say this is what exactly you have to do? Absolutely not. Things change like we talked about. What this does is it provides a vehicle to move forward. So, questions? Happy to entertain.
$8.4 million, that's one fee, right? There's still more fees for us that we're gonna have to find, I mean, with grants and.
8.4 is what you're looking at for your
Total,
yeah.
for everything that you guys looked at, right, to fix
Mhm.
what, these 4 areas?
Replacing those 4 areas, you're almost replacing probably close to 60% of your system.
Okay,
That's why that number looks so ugly.
okay.
And that's just for wastewater?
Correct.
So you applied for grants though, right, for us already?
We haven't applied for anything yet.
Yeah.
Once this document's approved, tonight's part of that approval process.
Right.
Once if council should so choose to vote, approve this document then can be used to pursue financing dollars.
Do you assist with that, the financing search, or?
That's what
That's what you thought.
Jodi and Travis help with. There's different ones we do and can help with. But a lot of the ones that are through the state, specifically, there's CDBG, which is OCRA, which is a federal program. That's what this was funded through. That one's a lot of grant dollars. You guys do qualify for that, so that's a good one to go for. Not everybody qualifies for that. There's the state revolving loan fund. That's another one we can help. We'll probably be helping their group with that. They ask a lot more engineering style questions. The other one's USDA, which you guys are familiar with. You've used it before in the past. There's community crossings, which we're currently helping you guys with. That does your streets, but we can also start using that for storm sewers if we want to. So there's different mechanisms that we can use to start pairing things together to help working things through. Hey, this storm sewer is acting up. Okay, we know that. How do we function it? How do we get it through? How do we make it practical? Stage some of this stuff off.
The storm sewers is all done been replaced, right? It was cut and replaced with new pipes.
When they did the project, they showed anything that crossed being cut and replaced. Yes, their as-built drawing shows several scenarios where that
When I
happened.
read the ordinance, there was $4.5 million. They said there's all this new pipe, 8-inch new pipe, 12-inch new pipe, is all put through new pipe. According to the last ordinance in 17. Town ordinance on separating sewer and sewer.
You're saying when they did that project, they had to put in new pipe?
Yeah.
Yes, they would have. Yes,
They did.
yes. They show
So we got all new pipe on that stuff.
anything that they replaced, they put new pipe in, or they added storm sewer to that street and then replaced the laterals. So the existing main, they kept as sanitary, and they would add a storm line in, and then they would pull all the stormwater out, is what they looked at doing.
So we got all new pipe on the storm sewer.
You have some new pipe, not all new pipe, no.
Caught one new pipe on the ordinance.
I'm saying community-wide, where they replaced it and had those improvement projects, they put new pipe in, yes.
I think it's like 25,000 feet. On the ordinance. It was new, 8-inch, 20-inch, 12-inch, and all.
Yes, yes, there was a variation, yes.
So we don't have no trouble with the storm sewers. Lines.
You have trouble with the storm sewer in certain parts of the community from what the residents spoke up in the surveys, that there's localized flooding, or there's water that ponds near the street. There's photos that were turned in as well through that survey process that show that stormwater doesn't get away as fast as maybe you guys would like it to.
We're not treating it at the sewer plant.
No. That project helps split up some of your system, not all of your system. Yes.
Okay, just gonna segue on to Julie's question here. So with the storm sewers, I mean, areas in the city that you identified are low-lying areas, and when the creek is running high, it just takes a long time for the areas for the water to drain. How are we gonna get the water out into the sewer? I mean, imagine it's gonna be, the sewer water into the creek. If the creek's already high, and it has to be gravity fences, I didn't see any pumps or anything in the proposals.
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't want to get too technical on why that doesn't work, but essentially if you look at it, my water elevation's here and I'm still pumping it here, it's coming back. So you have a cyclical pattern that happens. Just because I'm pumping it up here, well, it's going to go back to the low-lying area. Well, I'm going to pump it up, and that pump's just going to keep pushing that same water back and forth. That's why when you're in a low area sometimes, there really is no mechanism besides saying, hey, we're gonna dig a big hole here and we're gonna let that water flood this whole field. Which buying agricultural ground around here isn't cheap. So, in order to do mechanisms like that, it's just very, very expensive, very expensive.
So you're looking at retention pits, are they about the same size?
You can look at retention, but I would say now you're probably looking at servicing the underserved areas of the community, more so than looking at the retention. One, it's gonna help with your sanitary sewer system. It's gonna pull water away from that as well. We've done actually projects in several different communities where we just replaced storm sewer, and it significantly increased or decreased the amount of I&I entering the system, amount of clear water entering the system. That water just had a clean tile to go through now, so it didn't even fight and try to get to the sanitary. Inflow and infiltration. So inflow would be like direct connection, infiltration is like seepage through the ground. That's a good
So
question.
on page 76, it says about how there's 6 alternatives for the wastewater system. Maybe that's water system. I was wondering, is alternative 1, is that the first recommendation, or is there a main recommendation in alternative 1? Because I kind of read that as there are 6 alternatives, but there's a main recommendation.
Our main recommendation was, so what is it, the George? Yeah, the George Street and Mill Avenue intersection. That's our first priority. That's where we're seeing that you guys are gonna get your biggest bang for the buck. There's 4 main priorities and there's 2 other ones I think they relate to. Those are your 6. Those 2 that go are after the first 4, we're saying, yeah, it'd be nice, but those aren't our first priorities.
So alternative 1 is the, or
Yes.
there
Yes,
are
we're
the
listing-
6 choices that we have. Not
Yeah,
that
we're trying to list them in order to try to simplify.
I kind of misread it as, there was a main thing and then there's 6 alternative plans. Okay, now what you're saying makes sense. I don't know, this might be a little bit in depth here, but you have a present worth cost analysis. I mean, we can just go over that maybe offline and stuff because that's.
I would say high level, what we're looking at is what's the valuation of what it sits today. We do nothing, what's the valuation, what's the impact? It's a hard cost away because it's hard for us to understand, okay, how many homes are having sewer backups, how many issues are, what's the true impact when you do have CSOs releasing water into the creeks and streams. So that's a hard one to quantify and that the state understands that. Now we're looking at is, okay, when we're looking at these different project costs, what's your valuation of what it costs to do it versus what it's gonna cost in 20 years? What's your replacement value after 20 years? If that cost shows that you're still in the positive, you're net positive, great. That means that that project's net present worth is cheaper now to do than what you can still have valuation in for 20 years. Just trying to show that the economics behind it is gonna help pay off.
Is that almost like a dollar cost average?
Similar. Yeah, yes.
How long have they got to start bills on the eye and all those? What's that?
We already have IDEM under at bay, do you not?
Yeah, I mean,
You already have IDEM at bay with CSO 6 and 7. I mean, we're doing what they want us to do until we get
Yes.
whatever plan we have, right?
yeah, and we have to submit the long-term control plan.
By December.
I mean, because we've already extended it a couple of years.
Yeah,
several
I
years.
think what they were waiting on is understanding this,
Right.
so that you guys can use this to help formulate your long-term control plan. That long-term control plan will then start hitting dates. You're setting dates essentially in that plan that they'd like you to follow. Now, that's not saying, hey, we put a date of 2027 and that it doesn't get pushed to 2030. They allow you flexibility as long as you're showing progress, that you're not just being stagnant and letting the problems subside.
And I think I shared with you
Here.
notes that say, it looks like there's some errors in the map that are just some like.
I'm happy to clean that stuff up. That's
Okay, yeah, because that's what I didn't understand with whether.
I think
this
the one
was-
that you had, it was just a printing error where it glitched the PDF up, and that's why certain things were cut
How
off.
can you help out with some of those CSO markings and stuff, because it looked like there's.
Some of the base maps-
Seed and they're like in the middle of town where, CSO.
I'm happy to clarify those, how you guys label them. There's one base map that we went off of, which was the newest one,
Okay.
and that was the one we kind of went through and was using that, but it sounds to me that some of that isn't how they function or named it.
Yeah, because I go by the CSL zones every day. I'm over that. All right.
I'm happy to clarify that to make it easier for you guys. I don't want this to be difficult.
Yeah, or, and I would like to.
I meant to read.
I meant, like, I didn't want to go to these granting agencies and go like here, and they go like, well, there are all these, what's wrong with this map, it's not showing what you're saying it shows. I mean, that was one of my concerns, and I figured these were just old maps that I would share with you. Anybody else have questions?
Yes, sir.
Back to when you was talking about the overflows for a lagoon system. You was like out by the plant, like
The combined sewer flow?
the combined.
Yep,
sewer.
okay.
And you said something about you don't have an area for a lagoon system or a holding system, or did I misunderstand you?
Yeah, sorry. So the area that I was talking about for that was for stormwater. So let's say the part of the community that's along Redkey Run, those low areas. If you wanted to have a set-aside area for that flood to go to set aside somewhere else instead of in town, that's the holding area I'm talking about.
Would that be beneficial for the people that are in town to operate this?
That's those solutions that I was talking about. Those are the ones that cost probably $100 million. To modify FEMA maps to that degree, it takes a lot of infrastructure and a lot of cost, a lot of land to modify flood areas.
Well,
No.
I know most people know, but like, there's land down there by the sewer plant, and hooks on the sewer plant. It used to be a 20-acre lagoon system for the tomato factory years ago. Would that be what you're talking about, a lagoon system? Like, a lot of places, especially in Ohio, you go over there and they have lagoon systems.
That's for wastewater,
And it's-
yes.
But to hold it, and then they pump it back out as they treat it.
That's much.
If it was rainwater, you wouldn't have to treat it.
The issue where you're at now is, let's say you put in a lagoon system and you have that set aside area, you're putting a Band-Aid on a system that's already bleeding. So you can put that lagoon system in now to hold that water, so basically a holding bay. It'll work today, and maybe work tomorrow, maybe work the next 10 years. At some point, your system's still gonna show enough cracks in it that you're gonna get enough water that's gonna come right through and it's gonna overwhelm that as well. Now you're putting in another one. So you're not fixing the issue, is what we really see. So we don't ever really recommend that. Some communities put them in because that's what they feel their only solution is to try to get out of this. We would like to see that, hey, let's fix some of the infrastructure that is showing those cracks, that bleeding, essentially. Let's fix the problem and try to go long term.
I'm not saying don't fix the problem, I'm just saying that
It's something that's still on the table. Nobody's saying it's off the table. Yes.
So, I mean, that would have to, eliminate the card spill on the, catch someplace, put it in a tree later, but, you would have a reportable spill on that.
Well, the goal, if you're gonna put something in like that, you wouldn't want to spill, because IDEM's not typically super supportive of lagoon systems. They really like the mechanical, and that's probably why when they looked at your different evaluations, they probably put more for the mechanical plant. They're easier to hit treatment limits, as they change in the future and get more stringent, more tight, you can still hit them, they're easily to modify. The problem is, when it rains, it only gets so much, you don't have all the extra storage, but lagoon systems have the same problem. There's other communities that we have that do have lagoons, that they still have CSOs as well, because they're still getting blown out as well. So it doesn't always fix the entire problem.
You basically said what I was going to say. I've always heard that IDEM doesn't approve lagoon systems anymore.
It's very, very rare.
Yeah.
Very rare. A lot of the communities that have them now are under an agreed order now, like you guys are under, and they're probably watched a little bit tighter because, the technology and the limits on a lagoon it's hard to fine tune a lagoon, whereas a water treatment plant that you guys have can be fine-tuned very, very, very tightly.
So Jodi, you guys need us to vote whether we want to go through with the plan and have you guys apply for grants, is that the?
No, what I actually need is a resolution approved to approve the grant, or to approve the plan.
Can we,
Then I didn't have Don look this over. It's just to approve the plan, and then we can, close out the grant, and then that way we can have the plan to be able to apply for future funding for any of the projects.
I'll make the motion to accept the plan.
So there's a motion on the floor to accept the plan or the resolution.
so if the plan is accepted, we can still make those changes to the.
Absolutely, absolutely.
That's not stopping anything.
Is there a second?
I'll say,
Floyd seconded. Roll call. Jimmy? Gavin? Lloyd, yes. Dave? And myself, yes. So
With the grants, the plan stated that a lot of the grants
You need both
are
of these signed?
80-20
Just one copy?
split with the communities, the government, or the grant agency will put up 80%, but if you want to put up 20%.
Some. It depends which ones. OCRA, depending on your project size, could cover 100% of the project. I mean, they'll go up to what, 750,000, I believe, or 700,000? I forget the number. If we go after community crossing for stormwater, that's 75-25, so the town would have to put up 25% of the cost. The state revolving loan fund varies. A lot of that funding and financing is now more loan-based than it is grant-based. However, you guys have LMI population and they're really starting to funnel dollars towards that as opposed to, hey, maybe that's a good project. They're really starting to keep an eye on rates. So that's one. USDA, being that you're LMI, it's hard to know. They're going to base a lot of their grant dollars off your current rate, your LMI population percentage, and some of that may vary. You guys will probably get at least a 55-45, so they'll pay 55, you pay 45 when it's a long-term loan. That's what you guys did on your plan, I believe. So that could change and vary. It's hard to know. It's really hard to know. Some of those are very competitive, so it's difficult to know and gauge where things are at, how much extra there is. If they have a third round pool that's at the end of the year, because they pool all the state's money that's not being used, and they say, hey, well, Redkey in the state of Indiana wants this amount of money. Well, they might pool that, and they may have it available for you then at that time too, so it just varies.
What's LMI?
Low to moderate income.
Oh,
Sorry, yeah. The state has way too many acronyms.
right.
Yeah.
And so now that we put that motion into place, what happens from here?
I will send all the information into OCRA, the minutes of the meeting tonight. They'll approve the plan, well, it's already been approved by them.
Officially,
Yeah, and then we'll have to make a final draw for the remaining amount. The grant was 90, the contract was 90, the grant was for 81,000, and the local match was 9,000. OCRA's already paid 47,700. I think town has paid 6,300 left for you, and so there's still $2,700 there the town would have to pay, the local match. I'll take care of all that for you, get all that paperwork done. We'll get that submitted, we'll get the grant closed out, and then we can move forward with whatever project that you, as the town, would like to do. Or, whatever you feel is the priority.
It just stinks because, look, I'm just saying because Bell had already been paved and we have to tear up the streets now, right? Dang, it just stinks. It seems like we move 3 steps forward and 5 backwards.
Well, it depends what section of Bell, but yeah.
Because you said Bell and George is your first priority,
That
right?
would be it based off the usages, yeah.
Right.
That cover repaving afterwards?
It'll pay the favor, yeah. They're not gonna leave you with it just a
Oh,
little.
yeah. Well, yeah.
We will ensure of that.
That was a part of it.
I want to thank you. I think you made a very complicated subject, very easy to, or somewhat easier to understand.
I'm happy to come back and talk about it more, because I know there's plenty of pages in there, so.
Does anybody else have any questions? Anybody else have any questions?
Will you be here after the meeting?
I'll give you whatever you need, sure.
Okay, awesome, thank you.
This meeting's adjourned.